I believe that the war must be brought to an end. Negotiations after everything that has been done, I am against negotiations.
Kadyrov says there is no need for any talks with Ukraine. At the same time, Russians have started openly complaining about the war. My name is Albina Pidhirnyak. I'll share the latest updates next. Talks about the war in Ukraine are focused on territorial claims over the Donetsk region. This was stated by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Let me give you as a point of example. There's a lot of talk about security guarantees. And it's something that there's general agreement about now with the case of Ukraine. But those security guarantees basically involve the deployment of a handful of European troops, primarily French in the UK, and then a U.S. backstop. But in fact, the security guarantee is the U.S. backstop. It is not and I'm not diminishing the fact that some countries in Europe are willing to place troops in a post-war Ukraine. What I'm pointing out is that is irrelevant without the U.S. backstop. And the reason why you need such a strong U.S. backstop is because our allies and our partners have not invested enough in their own defense capabilities over the last 20 or 30 years. Now, hopefully that's going to change.
Friedrich Merz said that Ukraine joining the EU by January the 1st, 2027 is impossible. It is rather strange position from the European leaders.
In Berlin, in Paris, we discussed this topic in great detail with each other. And we also told the Americans that Ukraine's accession on January 1st, 2027, is out of the question. It doesn't work. All members, including Ukraine, who later want to join the European Union, must meet the Copenhagen criteria. The process usually lasts several years. Ukraine must have the prospect of becoming a member of the European Union, but this is a long-term process. On the way there, we can slowly bring Ukraine closer to the European Union. It is always possible, but joining so quickly is simply impossible. By the way, there are other priorities now. These are negotiations that are taking place in Abu Dhabi.
American economist Peter Schiff, who predicted the 2008 crisis, said that the US is facing serious problems again. He believes the world is turning away from the United States and that the dollar will lose value.
Gold and silver are warning about a bigger crisis that's going to hit either later this year or maybe next year. We are headed for a U.S. dollar crisis.
Well, let's jump in on the dollar. Let me just jump in. Except for the yuan at the moment, the U.S. dollar is weaker against all major currencies. In fact, it's hitting a 4-year low. Sometimes people say, well, you don't want too strong a dollar, because that means, multinational companies here in the United States, their products become more expensive. So where's the sort of middle ground here?
Yeah, well, it's actually weaker against the yuan, too, because the other currencies, the way your charts look, it's the other currencies going up, but then in the yuan, it shows the dollar going down. Look, the dollar is weaker across the board. And this is a vote of no confidence in the U.S. economy, in the U.S. government's ability to manage its finances. You know, the nail in the coffin was the big, beautiful bill, because before Trump was elected, there was actually some hope that the U.S. might actually, get a handle on spending and cut government spending. You had Elon Musk coming in with Doge, but unfortunately they ran him out of town because there's no stomach, even in the Republican Party, for cutting government spending. So the deficits are running out of control even more now than they were before. And now you have Trump antagonizing the world with tariffs that aren't really on the world. The tariffs are on Americans. Americans pay the tariffs, but it makes foreign goods more expensive for American consumers. And so foreign companies don't do as much business in the United States. But now you also have Donald Trump threatening to invade Greenland, whether he does it or not.
Well,
he's talking about the fact that we have this strong military.
Hold on, he said that
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that, in his view, Western security guarantees for Ukraine cannot ensure a reliable and lasting peace.
Territory of the former Ukraine and continue to make this regime a springboard for creating threats against the Russian Federation, then you will probably realize for yourself that such security guarantees can hardly provide reliable guarantees. Security guarantees were agreed in April 1922 in Istanbul, and the main draft of these guarantees was proposed by the Ukrainian side itself. We supported this project. Then you know the story when Boris Johnson, then Prime Minister of Britain, forbade them to sign the relevant agreement, which had already been initialed. And those guarantees ensured the collective nature of security, the indivisible nature of security, including the security of both the Russian Federation and the entire region where Ukraine is located. So we will look at real offers and will not focus on those very public games that make you so excited.
Meanwhile, in another intercepted call, Russian civilians speak openly about shelling, unfair living conditions and lies from the authorities.
Watch the news over there every day. Here yesterday they wrote, Graveransky, Borisov districts were shelled. What a lull. They won't come to an agreement. Yesterday our people were talking. A woman from China came, she is the same. I said, so fuck them to the last. They are sitting, their children, where is everyone? Abroad, everyone is covered. Yesterday I read where they are, where do they get the information from? The average salary in some, well, they did not name which regions, 150,000. Why lie? People are in poverty, they have 150,000 salary. What did we do to them then? From January it will be 27, at least 50 would have been done then, right? Well, now it's 21 and a penny or 22. Everyone took the income tax. Well, here's how I did all last winter. And what is left? And they are 150. And now we have begun to live. About the minimum of longevity, we have up to 120 years. Yes, all this. That's right, people write comments. If you add a pension or something there, then leave the prices the same. And that these pensions are about 20, what is left there? They are chattering like these people are sitting. That's right, they are from their 400,000, that's how they reason. But no, now they are speaking, and many of these journalists, and that's it. Here's when you look at the countryside. Why don't you plant vegetable gardens? Why don't you keep a farm? They think it's so simple. No, that's how they think. Young people do not live in the village, but the elderly, what kind of farm do they have? Old people have gardens. So I say, all the young people have left the village. What is going on in general?
In temporarily occupied Mariupol, local residents appealed to Putin to talk about their problems, but the truth is that Putin doesn't care.
Open appeal to the President of the Russian Federation, the Government of the Russian Federation, the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation. Residents of Mariupol expressed their distrust of Denis Vladimirovich Pushilin, the government of the DPR, all bodies and structures of the DPR. We, Mariupol residents, and our city suffered in this war like no other. We did not leave him in difficult times and intend to be with him to the end. Although it is extremely difficult to maintain optimism in the living conditions that the leadership of the DPR has provided us. Mr. President, you must hear the truth, and we will tell it to you. Let's start with Federal Constitutional Law No. 5, adopted in October 2022 and regulating legal relations in the DPR. In Mariupol, this law does not work. Instead, there is a so-called Regional 1, which is significantly different from the above, which allows the leadership of the DPR to solve all the problems of Mariupol in its own way. As a result, our people were left without housing, land, work, pensions, recreation, and much more. By issuing a huge number of bylaws, the DPR deprived the residents of Mariupol of all housing rights. Instead of 650 demolished residential buildings in Mariupol, only 76 compensatory ones were erected. At this point, the program for the construction of such housing is closed. The apartment queue in the city is not 5,000 people, as Denis Pushilin reported, but according to resolutions number 175, 61, and 141, in the waiting lists, according to the most conservative estimates, there are about 20,000 families and about 7,000 more of those who cannot stand in this queue at all. Having closed the entrance to Sheremetyevo for residents of the Donetsk region and declared them dead, the housing of these people was transferred to municipal ownership and they are trying to give it to Mariupol residents as ownerless. As for the restoration of the surviving houses, it has been going on for almost 4 years. Contractors are changing, money is laundered, and there have been no repairs in the apartments. For this reason, today about 70% of the housing stock in Mariupol is not inhabited, and no one is responsible for this. But mortgage construction was in full swing in the city. The widely advertised program at 2% per annum is a banal fiction, because almost none of the locals can use it, since there is neither a credit history nor an appropriate salary. Prices for mortgaged apartments are in the range of 180–200,000 rubles per square meter, and the amount of compensation for lost housing is only 51,500 rubles. There is something to think about. There have never been problems with water in Mariupol. Now the authorities have introduced a strict schedule for supplying water to residents with outages. Prices for utilities are very high, but in fact they are either not provided to the population in full and of inadequate quality, or are not provided at all. And for refusal to pay for such services, the apartment may fall into ownerlessness. Food prices in Mariupol are significantly inflated compared to Russian cities. There are no chain federal supermarkets, so the townspeople with their meager salaries of 15 to 30,000 rubles a month do not have the opportunity to eat well. The same story with telephone tariffs. Pensions are low, the processes of recalculation, as well as seniority, are unreasonably and as long as possible.
Russian propagandists talk about a so-called energy ceasefire, but Russia continues to strike Ukrainian territory. In Kiev, heating centers are working to help people stay warm. Dear friends, thank you very much for watching this video, for your activity in the comments and for liking the video. Stand with Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine.